Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to share my health journey with you and what I consider my miracle story. Um, where do I start? I think like most women, we have little things that we feel. It might be puffiness in our hands or in our feet, or maybe feeling some bloating. And we ignore those things. And, we make, I guess, find excuses as to why we feel that way. Oh, I probably had something with too much salt, or I've been sitting too much, or maybe I ate too fast, or something like that. Now I'm going to go back a little bit because when I and this is very personal, and I believe that this is important. I don't believe that women should have to hide the way they feel or the things that they experienced. And especially when I'm working with my clients, these are things that I want to know. I want to know their history so that I can better understand maybe what some of the issues are. So when I think back as a young woman, when I first got my period, I had extremely painful periods. Now, for some reason, I don't know where this came from, but for some reason, it became normal for young women or girls to experience very painful periods. Well, that's not normal. And maybe it's because, our mothers experienced that. And so they just said to us, well, this is just the way it is. Now, mine were at times very debilitating. I almost couldn't move because the pain was so bad, and I was very nauseous. And of course, back then, I grew up on the farm. My parents were like, "You go to school, you don't miss school," and no slight to them whatsoever. I get it. You had to push through things, especially when you lived on the farm. There was just work to be done. So they took me to the doctor and asked the doctor, "Okay, we don't want her to miss school, but she has these really painful periods. What can we do?" So the doctor gave me very strong medication, basically Tylenol 3 with codeine, and that's a whole other story. But it didn't work for me. It actually it ended up being somewhat of a trip for me. Codeine just really trips me out, so I can't take codeine. So I had to learn to suffer with it. And of course, they don't look into why it. Like I said, it was normalized. Okay, fast forward. Once I was older, on my own, left home 18. Once I was older, people said, well, you can go on the birth control pill. That will help to alleviate the pain. And I had a new boyfriend, so I thought, okay, this all makes sense. So I went on the pill. Again, it was just offered as a solution, not knowing all of the effects that it could have on my body as far as nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, all those types of things. And I thought, well, I'll only be on it a few years because, eventually I'll want to have a family, so I'll just go off. So sure enough, it did. It alleviated the pain. I didn't realize the other things that it was doing to me. And other things that become normalized, bladder infections, yeast infections. And what are you given? You're given antibiotics to make those things go away. Little do you know what it's doing to your microbiome. And you end up in this constant circle of getting bladder infections, getting yeast infections, going on antibiotics. It's just a vicious circle. Okay, so fast forward, go off the pill, wanting to get pregnant, and again, not understanding what it's done to my hormones. Unfortunately, I was not able to get pregnant. And again, that's a whole other story. I'm not going to go into the details. But I decided to stay off the pill. I didn't want to go back on the birth control pill. So hence, all of a sudden comes back my extremely painful periods. Of course, now I'm working in the corporate world, and, didn't have bosses that understood this whole thing of not being able to work because you had your period. This is ridiculous. So had a doctor give me naproxen, which is an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. And again, it has side effects. I didn't know that naproxen could end up really affecting and essentially destroying my gut lining. And after a few years of being on it, again, I didn't equate it to the naproxen, but I was having extremely bad gut issues. Now, of course, I've been on antibiotics for bladder infections and stuff, and for other reasons. So that's affecting my gut microbiome. Now I'm taking something that's destroying my gut lining further. And I don't know, I think probably mid-30s or so, my digestive system was destroyed. I was having all sorts of problems with my digestive system. The medical system just said, well, you need more fiber, eat all bran or something like that. And there was always some type of excuse rather than looking at the root cause. There was always just do this or just do that. It was a temporary fix. So I had to sort of just stiff upper lip and get through these things. And at times when the pain was extremely bad, I didn't feel bad about not going into work. But as women, we just keep pushing ourselves. We keep pushing ourselves because of demands, either, wanting to show up at work a certain way, or demands within our families, children, those types of things, parents that we might have to care for. So that's what I did. I continued to push through all the time and just kept ignoring all of these symptoms to the point where I literally would walk around holding my gut because it hurt so bad. And it hurt so bad, the pain actually radiated into my hands at times. And no solutions given. If you looked at my blood tests, they looked fantastic. I was very healthy. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And somebody suggested to me that I go see an herbalist. Now, again, this is like way back. I mean, I'm a holistic nutritionist now. I understand this world, but way back, I put a lot of trust in the medical system. I put a lot of trust in medical doctors. And the person said to me, what have you got to lose? Everything you're doing is not working. So what do you have to lose by going to see the herbalist? So that's what I did. What was the very first thing the herbalist put me on? Back then, I think most probiotics were purely acidophilus, but my system was so depleted that acidophilus actually was a huge help. So I started taking that. I started taking some other herbs, but she also sat down with me and she said, okay, let's analyze what you're eating. Maybe we need to make some changes there. Now, this is the first time anybody had ever said this to me. So that's what we did. We talked about how I ate. And so she suggested, okay, let's cut out the whites, white bread, white rice, anything that was highly processed. And yeah, back then, I ate overall healthy. I had a garden, those types of things. But yeah, ate pizza, ate white bread. I had a bread maker. I made bread at home, but it was still made with white flour a lot of times. So she suggested, let's make those changes. Then we cut out other things. I used to drink soft drinks. So she said, let's cut that out for a while. Let's cut out chocolate. Let's cut out alcohol. So we cut out a number of things. She put me on some herbs to help my digestive system. One of them was psyllium husk to get my digestive system moving. She also put me on some herbs to hopefully help with my period pain. So one of them was black cohosh. And when I think about that, like so many years ago, I didn't even know what these things were. She had a specific diet she wanted me to be on for 2 weeks. And she said, let's see how you do. Well, I could feel my body changing. My bowel movements were changing. My digestive system was getting the support it needed. And the different herbs that she had me on, one being black cohosh. There was some others, and I can't remember which ones now, but it was also helping to alleviate my period pain to a certain extent. So I didn't have to take the really strong, the NSAIDs that were affecting my digestive system. Now, she never told me to stop those, that they could be affecting my digestive system, because I don't think back then they even really knew how much they affected the digestive system. Anyway, after 2 weeks, I felt completely different. I didn't have the pain anymore, so I felt a lot better. And what do we do when we feel better? We kind of go back to old habits. So eventually I started incorporating, soft drinks again. I never drank a lot, but, socializing, those types of things. And so keep moving forward. Now I'm getting closer to that perimenopause stage, which so I turned 40 in 2001. Perimenopause wasn't even a word that it was ever talked about way back then. So, here I'm entering into 40. I was in a new relationship and I wanted to have a child. And I went on fertility medication to see if I could have a child. That didn't work. But again, kind of messed up my hormones. And okay, fine, sort of went back to, life as it was. Being in a new relationship, we ate differently. I was eating foods that I normally didn't eat. And, things started to affect me. I started to put on weight. So again, when I look back, I now know that that was perimenopause that was doing that. My sleep was changing a bit. My body was changing. So I started putting on weight. I was blaming it on the food, change of lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. I eventually started to change the way that I ate again, back to what I was used to, eating basic meals, having a protein, having vegetables, and having a starch, trying to get out and exercise more. But overall, I knew there was something going on with my body. Now, in that period of time, after doing the in vitro, I'd put on 30 pounds, which for me was quite a bit of weight. I'd always been slim most of my life. I'm 5'5". I have a smaller build. So an extra 30 pounds, I really felt it. But I was also unhappy. I was miserable. So I, started life on my own and started eating the way that I enjoy eating, started working out, and I eventually lost the weight and got back down to a weight that I was comfortable with, where I felt good. And I continued that lifestyle. I was quite happy with that lifestyle. But I was also very driven in the corporate world. And so I was working in companies where I was working long hours. I wanted to move up in what I was doing. I had that ambition. I didn't have children. So to me, that was my ambition, was to do really well in the corporate world. And, you get a little lackadaisical. I was traveling quite a bit. So you're out at conferences, you're in, staying in hotels, you're in airports, all that type of stuff. So, you start to eat things that maybe you normally wouldn't eat, and the weight started to creep back on. Meanwhile, I'm in perimenopause, my body's changing. But what am I doing? I'm blaming, my lifestyle, the long hours, the stress, all those types of things. I'm not looking at the things that I'm putting into my body as being a potential contributor to how I feel. So sort of fast forward, all of that life was in Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's where I'm originally from. I now live in Vancouver, BC. The last company that I worked for moved me to Vancouver, BC. And being here, seeing a very different lifestyle, people are very much into, their health. Veganism was quite popular here, vegetarianism, those types of things, but leading more of an organic, holistic lifestyle. So I started to observe, and I had sort of started, living that lifestyle when I lived in Winnipeg, but I still, kind of did as others did as well too, sort of to fit in, because people would look at me and they'd say, "Why do you eat that way?" It's very strange. Anyway, so come to Vancouver. Now, that last corporate position had a lot of demands, and I wanted to do really well. So I was pushing my body. I started to see a naturopath when I moved to Vancouver, and all these little sort of things that were bothering me, that little bit of weight gain and just digestive system still really not doing well. I mean, it was manageable, but it still wasn't really quite right. And so the naturopath did a bunch of specialized testing that I offer to my clients now, but we did a bunch of specialized testing. And sure enough, my hormones were out of whack. Well, they'd probably been out of whack since my birth control days, but, not knowing. And then, of course, eventually doing in vitro, all of these things sort of added up. Meanwhile, I'm also in perimenopause. And it's interesting because my medical doctor, prior to seeing the naturopath, just said, "This is just the way it is. You're at that age. This is just the way it is. This is how women feel." And I said, like, there's no solution. And, my feet were swelling. I wasn't sleeping well. And it was all blamed on my lifestyle, the travel, the corporate stress, all those types of things. And I thought, wow, I just, I don't know, this is not the way that I want to live. But my doctor convinced me that, your blood tests are fine. Again, blood tests are fine. So we can't figure out what's wrong with you. And this is where women can feel that to a certain extent. Is this psychosomatic? Like, is there something wrong with me? Anyway, once I started to see the naturopath, the first things that were recommended: let's go off gluten, let's go off dairy. One of the reasons for that is I'd had my gallbladder removed. As I said, this is a pretty personal share, but I had had my gallbladder removed because I had one really large stone, and I felt the best thing to do was have it removed. I didn't realize there were ways that it could potentially be reduced, those types of things. And when you don't have a gallbladder, that actually can start to cause a lot of digestive issues as well too. So you can see that things are adding up to this point of kind of imploding. I'll say it that way. So anyway, made some changes, cutting out the gluten, cutting out the dairy. That really helped. My naturopath had me on a bunch of supplements to help with my stress levels, all those types of things. And I started to feel really good. So what did I do? Because I felt really good, I had this goal of doing a bodybuilding competition. I was never an athlete. I always shied away from anything overly athletic, but I really wanted to do a bodybuilding competition. A coworker that I worked with did the competition, and I was amazed at watching her body transform. And I just thought this would be so cool. And for me, it was more of wanting to do that. It was just me. It was me and the weights. That's the only way that I could explain it. And I started lifting weights at age 45 when I wanted to lose that 30 pounds. So I really enjoyed lifting weights. It was something I really connected to because as I say, it was me and the weights. It was observing my body, counting the reps. It was almost meditative to a certain extent because I was so focused when I was in the gym. It was just focused on me and what I was doing and how my body was responding. So I decided to do the bodybuilding competition. There was also another little thing in there that I wanted to do. I wanted to do a boudoir shoot. I was going to be turning 50, and I wanted to have beautiful pictures of my body. It was just something that it was actually inspired by Samantha on Sex and the City, and she had done one, and I thought, that's really cool. I want to do that one day. So I thought, okay, I'll do the two of them. I pushed myself really hard for 8 months. Working full-time, corporate world, lots of demands, as I said. So keeping up with my work. Also, having to go into this new routine of certain way to eat. I had to eat 6 times a day. I had to, cook all my food. I couldn't eat out. I had to work out 5 times a week. 3 days, I think 2 or 3 days a week with my trainer, and then the other days by myself. And my body was responding. I was putting on the muscle, putting on the weight, all that type of stuff. And we decided that, yes, I would be ready to do a bodybuilding competition in May of 2013. So meanwhile, like, I'm now sort of, at that point, I was post-menopause. My last period was April 2011. So by 2012, 2013, I was post-menopause. I did the competition. I won third place, which I went into it just wanting to do it, just wanting to see what my body could do. I was thrilled that I won third place. And again, this is a woman who, I was never athletic. I shied away from any type of sport when I was in school and younger, and only started lifting weights at age 45. My type of working out was just being active in, my yard, my garden, house cleaning, those types of things. So winning this competition, winning third place was a huge victory for me. I was amazed at what I had actually achieved. What I didn't realize is I had actually started to create the perfect storm. So even though I was trying to do all the right things during my competition prep, eating 6 times a day on a digestive system that had been struggling for, a good part of my life, I just added additional stress, trying to keep up with work, doing the bodybuilding prep, all of that just added additional stress to my body and to me overall. So I go back to work, and all of a sudden my body, I could feel the pain coming in. And I would just push through it. I was working. I had to push through it. But when I did the bodybuilding competition, I realized that I really loved nutrition. So I knew that I was going to eventually leave the corporate world and study nutrition. So, just kept working, trying to support my body. My digestive system was a mess, constantly bloated. I started to feel pain in my joints. It sort of started in my hands and my shoulders, my elbows. I couldn't work out anymore because every time I went to the gym, I just put my body into this state of pain. So I had to stop working out. And so I did the competition in May. And by August, the beginning of August, I was just feeling awful, absolutely awful. I knew that I needed to stop everything and support my body. And I knew that I wanted to study nutrition. So I walked into my boss's office, or my manager, I guess you could say, walked into his office, and I said, I'm resigning. I feel awful, and I'm resigning. I need to look after my body. And I also know that I want to go back to school to study nutrition. From that point on, my body was just continuing to struggle. And it seemed like no matter what I did, nothing helped. I was overall eating healthy. I really wasn't drinking alcohol very much. I mean, I had to quit drinking while I was doing my bodybuilding competition and prep. And, after it was done, I just really didn't have the desire to drink very much. My one guilty pleasure was still chocolate and sweets. So yes, I still ate those, but overall I was eating pretty healthy, but nothing was helping my body. It was just, everything was getting worse. And there were some life things going on. My mom took ill, and I had to help her with her health. So I was spending time with her. I had a friend that was also really needing some extra support. So I was helping him. And I was just focused on, I just need to keep pushing myself. Again, I just need to keep pushing so that I can get to school. And maybe there was something inside of me that said, if I can get to school and start to understand my body, maybe I can start to heal myself. And absolutely no slight to my naturopath whatsoever. I mean, she was trying to help me as well too. But my body was, I hate to say broken, but I mean, there was just so many things going on in my body that it needed way more support than I think either of us understood. So I enrolled in school. I started school in September 2014. And what I said to myself is, I'm going to start applying everything that I know to my body, everything that I'm learning. I had access to the instructors who most of them were naturopaths. And I thought, there's got to be something that I'm missing here. So started studying, started learning about different things. And one of the things that we studied was about um, food sensitivities. Now, very different from food allergy testing that an allergist would do. Food sensitivity testing, and some people will say that's garbage. It's, there's no science to it. Well, you know what? I was so sick. I felt so awful. And every day was a struggle. I was in so much pain. It hurt. It hurt to sit. It hurt to lie down. I couldn't work out. Everything, it just, my body was a burden to me. And it was very depressing. I wasn't myself. So I decided to do a food sensitivity test. Now, the one that I did was very expensive. It cost me $1,200. And somebody might say, that's ridiculous. Why would you spend $1,200 to do a test like that? You don't even know if it's going to provide any solution. Well, you know what? I was desperate. I really was desperate because I thought, if I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life, like I was only 53 years old at that point, what was life going to bring me? Like, I wasn't willing to accept that. I thought there's got to be an answer somewhere. So I did the test. Sure enough, when you get the test, there's sort of levels of the sensitivities. So red, orange, yellow, green. So of course, green, yeah, green is safe. Your body's not reacting to that. I had very long lists in the yellows, semi-long list in the orange, and just a few in the reds. But here's the interesting thing. So I was eating olives and using olive oil. My body, that was in the orange category. My body was severely reacting to olive oil and olives. So I had to cut that out. I had to find something else, a different way to cook. As I said, the long list in the oranges. I can't even remember some of the foods that were in there now. So what I did was I changed everything immediately. I focused on all of the green foods. So I could still eat most proteins, animal proteins, fish. I could eat the majority of those. There was lots of vegetables that I could eat. Milk and gluten, of course, came back really high. I really wasn't eating those all that often, but I had to cut out things like yogurt and stuff like that. Anyway, so cut those things out immediately. And my body was also still in a lot of pain. And the things that I was learning at school about environment, our outside environment, but also our internal environment, things we're putting on our body, things that we're using in our homes to clean our homes. So I changed everything. I was so desperate to get my health back. I thought, I am not going to ignore my body anymore. And I'm going to do everything that I can possibly do to see if I can heal my body. So I changed all those things, started making a lot of the things that I was using on my body, changed my shampoo, changed my makeup. I stopped wearing perfume. And some people laugh, well, do you use deodorant? Well, I changed my deodorant. I stopped using typical drugstore deodorant, and I started using things like lemon juice. And people laugh when I say that, but it works great. It's always worked great for me. Anyway, within weeks, I started to notice differences. The pain wasn't as bad, but I knew that I couldn't This time I knew that I couldn't rest on my laurels, that I had to really stick with this and give my body the support that it needed. And this is the thing that sometimes, as I mentioned before, as women, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better. I can push myself again. And then we start to ignore some of those symptoms again. But I promised my body and myself that I would not do that, that I would persevere and do everything I possibly could do to heal my body. At about 18 months into this journey of changing everything, I had to do a certain assignment for a class, for a course that I was taking in school. And part of it was going through choosing a detox process and seeing how our body would respond to that detox process. Now, again, I was very concerned about making a lot of changes because I was seeing improvements. So I chose doing a 5-day detox of doing an infrared sauna and a float, the float tank, every day for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, and this actually makes me a little emotional, at the end of 5 days, I realized my pain was gone. My joints weren't hurting anymore. And that's the first time in 2 years that 2 years? Yeah, maybe even longer than 2 years, that my body wasn't in pain. And I was amazed. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I've turned things around. Now, again, I was not going to go back to old habits or anything. It's like, oh my gosh, like I've turned things around. My body's actually responding to this. So I continued to live that lifestyle. But I also got into what is referred to as orthorexia. Orthorexia is the fear of not being able to control what goes into your body. So very different than some of the other food disorders or eating disorders, whatever you want to call them. This was, I had to control every ingredient. So I wouldn't go out to restaurants. I wouldn't go over to friends' places that might be making food. It's like, I'll eat at home and I'll join you later. I started to control absolutely everything. I was controlling what was going on in my body. I in a way became fanatical about it. And I'm lucky because I did have people that, observe this. They were fellow students and they're like, Connie, you're kind of going in the other direction now. You're becoming really fanatical and restrictive about what you're doing. So I had to learn to find the happy medium, but there was no way that I had to figure out how I could live life, enjoy going out for a meal with friends, and still support my body. But I continued to cut out the foods. I only ate the foods on the green list, even though, the advice was, within 6 months, you can try, some of the other foods. No way. I wasn't willing to do that. So there was a lot of foods on my green list that I could eat. So I figured, okay, when I go out to a restaurant, how can I talk to them without saying, well, I have all these food sensitivities and, kind of being that pain in the neck client that, or customer at a restaurant. And I would observe the menu. I'd take a look at the menu, see what they had on there for ingredients. I'd find something that was pretty close and I'd say, I'm kind of special. And, the server would kind of laugh a little bit because I'd do it in a cute way. And I'd say, I'm wondering, I noticed you have this on the menu. Could this possibly be substituted with this dish? And in most cases, because I was handling it in such a, sort of funny, cheeky way, that they'd go to the kitchen, they'd come back. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. No problem. So I started to figure out how I could do those things. Now, when my body was breaking down at 52, I thought, oh my gosh, is this the rest of my life? Do I have an undiagnosed autoimmune disease? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Why can't anybody figure this out? I'm feeling this. I know that, this isn't just in my head. To go to this point, and here's the point that I want to make. Everything that we do has an effect on our body. Okay? Everything. The lifestyle that we're leading, the way that we're sleeping. Are we going to bed late? Are we moving our bodies? What are we putting on our bodies? What are we exposed to? Everything has an effect. It can either be positive or it can be, I'm going to use the word detrimental. So everything that I did and ignored up to age 52, when my body finally screamed at me and said, that's it, like the choice is yours. You can make the change or not. Everything I did to that point brought my body to that point. So 53 years or 52 years, basically. Then everything that I started to do after that to change. So I will be 64 this month. And I'm doing this in August 2025. So I'll be 64 this month. So from age 52 to age 64, that's 12 years. 12 years of doing things that accumulated that were positive for my body, to support my body to the way that I wanted to feel. And I can honestly say that every year, everything that I've done has supported my body in making me feel better and feel the way that I want to feel every day, have the energy levels that I want to have every day. I was able to go back to the gym. So I think I went back to the gym in 2016. And I'm still working out today. I mostly aim for 3 resistance training workouts a week. And then in between there, I like going for walks. So all of those things helped. And I don't have the orthorexia attitude anymore that I need to control everything. Do I absolutely buy organic ingredients? Absolutely, I do. I believe that those are the best things for my body. So I go to the local farmer's market and I buy organic ingredients. I eat animal protein. I eat fish. I focus on things that are more grass-fed, fish, wild caught, generally the smaller fish. So there's lots of things that I've done. I've used certain supplementation that, again, I feel it is important for my body, to support my body based on my past history and the things that I know. So this will be my lifestyle going forward. Do I make all of my, skincare ingredients and all that kind of stuff? No, not as much anymore. There's still the odd thing that, sometimes I'll make a body lotion or something like that. I don't wear perfume. I'd prefer to make an essential oil mixture, to mix it with a carrier oil. Those are the types of things that I enjoy because I like those scents better. I don't like a chemical scent. Yes, there's things that I've changed in the way, in my home, as far as things I clean my home with. All those things make a difference. But do I go out to a restaurant? Absolutely. Do I occasionally have some gluten? Yes, I do occasionally. But it's all about making it's all about making compromises. If I know that something's coming up and I'm going somewhere that, there's a food I really want to enjoy, then it's like, okay, just really focus on doing all the right things, supporting your body. Having one meal of gluten isn't, for me, I'm not celiac, isn't going to be the end of the world. I really don't drink alcohol. I just don't like the way that I feel the next day. But recently I had a cider with a friend, and yeah, it was nice, one cider, no big deal. I felt fine the next day. So I've figured out what works well for my body. And in all honesty, again, I'm going to get a little emotional, but I feel extremely, extremely fortunate and blessed. But I did a lot of work to focus on my body and regain my health. And I guess, the whole thing around this story, and I don't even know how long I've been talking at this point, but the whole thing around this story is there is help. there is help. Does it mean that you have to make changes? Absolutely. Um, I don't force any of my clients to make changes. It's what their goals are. It's what's important to them. But the one thing I will tell you is that I do help my clients try to figure out the root cause. That is something that I feel is sometimes the missing key with a lot of people when they're working with the medical system. That if there isn't anything major that shows up in blood tests, then it's kind of like, well, we don't know. We don't know what it is. And that's one thing that I do is I really look at things and get to the root cause and want to know the history. So anyway, that's my story. As I say, I do feel blessed, and I always, yeah, when I, get a little lackadaisical about my habits, things I'm eating, my overall lifestyle. There's times I don't get to the gym. I'm busy, working on my business, and my body starts to tell me, I can feel it. I can feel it in the change in my energy and in my strength. So I go back to, no, you know what? I know how to feel good. I know what I need to do to my body to feel good. Now, some people say, well, I'm, certain age, and, really, is there any hope for me? I believe that there is hope. I believe that there always is hope. Having somebody who listens. I'm a problem solver. I've always been a problem solver in every job that I've done, every company that I've worked for. It's something that I've always enjoyed, and I'm still being a problem solver, trying to figure out to get to the root cause. So is there hope? Yes, there is absolutely hope. But part of that depends on how badly you want to feel good. And for me, there was no way that I wanted to live life in pain and not have energy. I wanted to still be active and vibrant and vivacious, feel sexy, all those things. And I'm 14 years post-menopause. I feel fantastic. I feel strong. It just struck me, I'm going to be 65 next year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I end up at 65? And I want to go into that year really strong. So I'm putting a big focus over this next year on my health and just doing what's right for me without being fanatical, without, I still want to enjoy life, and I still want to do fun things, and I still plan to do that. But I feel that this next year is really key, going into 65 as strong and as healthy as I possibly can. So that is my story. I also believe that the more that I do to support my body gives me the ability to support my clients. It gives me the ability to keep my brain strong and clear, and research and I guess in a way, I get to know my clients based on the information that they give me and the questions that I ask and the answers that they give me. But also, I believe that when I'm healthy and strong, that also allows me to connect into their energy. And, I get certain messages from that, or I get certain feelings from that kind of give me more insights. So, being healthy and strong is important, not just for me physically, but also being able to show up for my clients in my best state so that I can support them. Anyway, if you've made it to this point, congratulations. I know that was a bit of a long story, but I'm very, very passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about helping women feel as good as they can feel through that menopause journey and beyond, because there are things that we still need to do to support our bodies post-menopause as women. and I'm very passionate about this. So if you've got any questions, you can post them down in the comments below. I know that I've pre-recorded this, and so you don't need to put that you're watching the replay or anything like that. But if you've got questions, please post them below. If you are struggling and you are a person who, you've just been told it's just the way it is, there's nothing that can be done, reach out to me. Let's have a chat. I'd be happy to, get on a Zoom call or get on a phone call and hear a bit about your story and see if there is something that I can help you with. I always say, as long as you're breathing, there is still hope. And I truly believe that with all of my heart. So thank you so much for listening. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel and like this video and share with somebody that maybe needs to hear my story and know that there is hope. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. And join me again next Monday at 2 o'clock for another session of Navigating Midlife.